Brighter Shores is a brand new MMORPG that has just entered early access. It is the vision of renowned developer Andrew Gower, who is both a founding member of Jagex and, of course, Runescape. Given the Gower's legacy for creating a much-beloved fantasy world which is still going strong over 20 years later, his new title is naturally garnering quite a bit of interest. As a huge Runescape fan even before I knew World of Warcraft existed, I'll give something made by a Gower a go, and this video will be my early impressions of Brighter Shores and of its features. Though I will say this before I get in the game, despite Brighter Shores' fate of inescapably being compared to Runescape due to appearance and developer, I reckon it's going to be quite the different experience, but we'll have to find out. So with that said, let's get in the game and see what Brighter Shores is all about. Heading straight into the game, we have the character creator, and you can probably tell this game is not going to have insane graphics. It'll be a bit closer to how things are on RuneScape 3 compared to old school, but it doesn't have those moments we can really pan the camera out and have huge vistas to look across. Still, my take on graphics and their importance in games has always been they're a bonus to have done well and can make you want to start a game, but the actual gameplay is what will keep you coming back. After going through my standard in-depth character creation process where I smash the randomize button a few times to see what I get, you head off straight into the world and undergo a very small tutorial. Here you find you have enlisted as a Hope Port guard and are going through your basic training. It's here where you are taught the controls, which in of themselves are very simple, and how to get around combat. Now, the combat in this game is extremely basic and simple, but also somewhat laborious and kind of annoying to do at the same time. Both of your weapons and enemies have various strengths and weaknesses, kind of like a Pokemon type system, where for example you may have a sword imbued with Tempeste magic, which is lightning, that will deal bonus damage versus enemies who are the Cryone or Frost type. Some enemies even have immunity to damage types or will deal a lot of bonus damage versus you based upon your weaknesses, so assessing threats is important, and it is quite easy to die or get super low on health versus higher level enemies. At the same time, death really doesn't have any downside. You don't lose experience, you don't seem to drop your items, you just respawn at a nearby infirmary and go again. The rather annoying part of combat is just the amount of clicks needed to initiate an action, and this is true throughout the game across a bunch of different activities. To start combat, you need to left click to bring up the enemy's menu, you need to click to choose attack, and then click to choose your weapon type to initiate with. 3 clicks per enemy at all times. I don't know if you ever played with the one button mouse mode on old school RuneScape, but the whole game is like this. On top of that, whoever does said 3 clicks the fastest will get the mob tag, and I haven't seen any multi-way combat yet either. Oh, and there's one more thing about combat. So far the game has very few enemies which are aggressive and will initiate combat upon you, but when you are engaged in combat you have to channel a spell before you can run away. This reminds me of the very early days of RuneScape where you had to undergo several rounds of combat before you could run from a fight, so just trying to sprint through dangerous areas when you're underleveled is probably going to get more and more difficult. Continuing onwards, we are told about our professions. These are essentially your skills and what you'll be leveling up in each episode. Now, episodes are currently the 4 main areas which exist in Brighter Shores. Imagine these are like the main chapters of the story, and a very important thing to know in Brighter Shores is that different episodes or main areas have different professions to level. For example, at the start in Hopeport you have guard, cooking, fishing, foraging and alchemy, which are trained throughout the area, but then when you eventually progress onto Hope Forest, the next area, you get a bunch of new skills which are scout, gathering, woodcutting and carpentry. It's not that all your current skills are reset upon entering a new episode, it's just there are different ones to train. Equally, you're going to need to collect new gear for the new episode as well. This decision has got quite a bit of criticism so far because it's just kind of strange compared to how MMOs usually are. Imagine this in World of Warcraft terms. You've been playing through vanilla, you're level 60, you have all your professions, you have all your gear, okay? And then you cross the dark portal into TBC and you're only level 1 in Outland. You have to go find new gear in Outland, your professions are level 1 in Outland, and it's like you're kind of starting fresh in that new area. You have to go and collect new armor and weapons there, which can only be used in TBC as well. That's kind of what we're talking about here, except to get started and progress through the grinds in Brighter Shores is a lot faster than it would be in WoW, and basic armor and weapons can be quite quite fast to get from monster drops, and you can build out a weapon and armor set which best fits the area you've just gone to. The intention for professions too is that you'll be wanting to go back to old episodes to continue leveling them, and they'll be interconnected between the different episodes. The training of these professions is more or less exactly what you would expect. Alchemy, you gather ingredients, chop them up, make them into a potion. Cooking, you buy stuff, you cook it. Fishing, you catch things, all that good stuff. I do have to mention the one-button gameplay here again though, especially for fishing, where similar to combat, you need to left-click to open the menu and then press catch. It just feels unnecessary to have 2 buttons on an action which should take 1. But soon enough you are unleashed on the world and can start playing through episode 1 as you wish. Similar to Runescape, this game does basically nothing whatsoever to hold your hand and to tell you exactly what you should be doing. You are given the key objective of the episode right at the start of it, and this has been true for both the episodes I've seen so far. This overarching objective will take some time, and it's entirely up to you how you achieve it. Personally, I'm a big fan of this. I think nowadays it's very easy to fall into the trap of treating games as not games, but objectives to be completed in the most efficient manner possible, so it's nice to have something new and undiscovered to experience. There are quests, of course, and as with RuneScape, quests are not to go and kill 10 boars and collect 10 bits of rope. Instead, they're stories within the current episode which will have you traveling around, exploring, investigating, and solving problems. The grind in Brighter Shores is done to access and progress quests, not as the quest, if that makes sense. Saying that, quests aren't as plentiful as you'd typically find in most MMOs, but there's a lot more to them, there's more substance, and I do wish more games did quests as RuneScape does, so overall this is a positive for me. There is a quest journal too which gives you some tips on what you need to be doing and holds key quest items there so they're not filling up your bag. Items to train professions are also held on a tool belt so not to clutter your inventory, as is currency. Speaking of bags, in Brighter Shores you have 24 slots instead of RuneScape's 28, but inventory management is just as important as ever. Each piece of fish, food item, potion ingredient, and so on will take up an individual inventory space. In fact, I'm yet to come across something which actually stacks in your proper inventory, which means it's gonna fill up really fast. Which brings us to another criticism of the game so far, the banking system. See, each profession has its own bank which is located somewhere on the map, meaning early on into the game you're going to be doing a lot of running to go and store things or to process them into something else. There is a quest in episode 2 where you will learn to bank things remotely from storage rifts which are placed across the map, but until then you better get used to running because you're going to be doing a lot of it. Oh, fortunately though, there's no energy system like RuneScape, so you're not going to be forced to walk after a while. I think while some criticism is warranted here, at the same time people are so used to having the answers for games in advance that they kind of jump the gun a bit on which problems are problems and which are systems which the game solves naturally when you just carry on playing. Maybe I'm doing this with other criticisms and I'm not even aware of it yet. That could absolutely be the case. It just feels like I'm kind of trusting the process and assuming that things will work out. But the first episode will introduce you to the core gameplay loops of gathering, crafting, questing, and just progression. I thought overall Brighter Shores had great attention to sound design, both with just the small little actions of you gathering stuff or picking things up, or just a unique action on a quest, all the way to the music which changes between different areas as you explore them. I am definitely a music-on enjoyer when I play games, so I was pleasantly surprised by this part of the game. Moving on though, being at the start of this game's early access as well means there's going to be a lot of people out in the world. After all, this is an MMORPG. Other people are super important to your experience. Or are they? Because once again, Brighter Shores has taken some interesting choices here. First up, there can only be 20 people in one of the rooms at once, and the rooms are these small individual spaces you'll run into throughout the map and are to be explored as you go. Due to this, there are no servers or realms, as rooms will aim to have a good number of players in them at all times. This both stops overcrowding and server-related issues, but it also puts a hard cap on how many people you're going to ever see in the open world. Equally, for some reason, you have to actually opt in to be able to chat in the game. In fact, I didn't even realize my chat was off for a while till I went and checked again. I thought everyone was just getting on with the game and being quiet. On top of that, well, you kind of don't really need other players, at least at this stage in the game, for anything that I've come across yet. There'll be player trading eventually, but that's not in the game yet. Brighter Shores could very well be a single-player RPG with other people sharing the world and doing activities within it. And to be honest, I don't necessarily think that this is a bad thing. This game strikes me as a very low pressure, easygoing, grindy type game where you log in whenever you can and you watch your XP bar go up a bit. Old school RuneScape can be this type of game if you want it to be. Retail WoW can be this game if you want it to be, as long as you stick to achievements and collections at endgame. But at the same time, baseline Brighter Shores should encourage communication more at an early stage and leave it to the player if they wish to change the settings or to have them being off or limited. I think the lack of player trading at the moment hasn't done the game too many favors either. Everyone is playing an Iron Man right now, and Iron Man means slower progression than you would typically experience. It's fine as an alternative playstyle should the player wish to opt in, but not as a baseline. Also, I'm not sure whether this game has some kind of grand exchange or auction house. I couldn't find the answer to this online either. Are we going to be stood somewhere spamming selling lobbies 250 GP each again like it's the early 2000s? I mean, it's got its charms, yeah, back in the day in Falador you go over here for whips, you go there for rares and so on and so forth. But I remember the start of old school RuneScape and they didn't have the GE, and I actually quit until it was added back in the game because look, I'm not trying to play as a trader, I want to go hit stuff with a sword or chop down a tree or something. Brighter Shores also has 3 classes, the Cryo Knight, the Hammer Mage and the Guardian. Each of these uses a variety of attacks and spells as well as specializes in their own school of magic, and at this early stage I'm kind of struggling to see the appealing classes. In fact, you'll probably be a good 3 to 5 hours of casual play in this game before you even get to pick your class at all. I definitely need to invest more time to see the benefit of classes, and perhaps there's enough there and enough difference that would make me want to do a new playthrough to see what the others offer. But to be honest, I already find the prospect of regrinding the professions I have already done to be not very appealing whatsoever. The professions were fine to do the first time, but there are 2 other classes. Do I really want to repeat everything I've done so far 2 more times? I'm not so sure about that. Speaking of grind, and I've already mentioned it with combat and professions, but there's just too much clicking per action to get something done right now. Also, for the actual game and what it is, you have to pay too much attention to the point where it's kind of annoying. When you're fishing, for example, the fish are always moving and players can be standing on top of them, so you have to watch out for where the fish are. You then have to click twice to catch each one, and they respawn a little bit slower than how fast you can catch them. You can't not pay attention in Brighter Shores. It's second monitor content that wants to be on your main monitor. It's like how woodcutting is in level 1 in RuneScape, where you have to constantly run between each tree as it respawns, instead of just parking yourself at a yew or redwood tree and remembering to click every so often. Now there is AFK training which you unlock after the first episode, and this is literally AFK training, as you set your character to do something whilst offline, and they'll continue to gain experience in that profession until you log back in. But I think people who want to do something in a casual chill game like this want to do it whilst doing something else, like watching a stream or a TV show or something. At the moment, I don't think Brighter Shores offers that from professions that I've seen so far. It wants you to pay too much attention for the gameplay that it offers. If there were semi-AFK methods and higher effort methods where you can choose between how fast you want to get experience, that would help. As in, you could do the aforementioned method to catch fish, or just stand in one static place and catch them at a much slower rate. But I don't think they want to let you stand and just fish in a static place because they're going to get called a RuneScape clone. Again, maybe this is me criticizing something the game resolves with time, but I can't see people leveling professions like this forever. Also, at times I'm really questioning what was the point of adding this profession into the game. Cooking, for example, in chapter 1 is you go buy stuff from a vendor, you cook it, and then you sell it to another nearby vendor for a very small amount of profit, and repeat. You don't need food in combat, by the way, you full heal after each instance of combat, and if you want to heal in combat, you use a potion. And even with food, I can't see a reason to sell it to other players either. I just leveled cooking as much as I could to get some easy levels so I could get on to the next episode, and then I abandoned it pretty much. I believe the goal is for interconnecting skills when you have multiple chapters open, but again, I'm kind of early in the game. I feel like I'm just trusting the process and that it's going to make sense. But how many people are going to stick through this early game with a promise of, trust me bro, it gets better later? So let's round up on some overall points, with our positives first. Very open-ended world, lots to explore, not a completely solved game. Good music score and sound effects throughout the game, definitely a music on this. It has that silly kind of RuneScape humor, and it doesn't take itself too seriously all of the time, and I like that. Questing isn't go kill balls, there's actual stories within the game, this is great. It has the potential to be a good casual grindy game where you'll watch your XP bar go up. Updates are being made very fast. Feedback was given regarding keybinds, and Andrew already started getting them implemented while 1 day after early access was open. This is the power of making your own game, I guess. The first 2 episodes are free to play. When I was playing myself, I didn't have members, and it didn't make any difference as far as I could tell. Trading when it's active, and the later zones will need members however, which is going to be £4.99 a month. And there are no plans for microtransactions beyond that. Early access will still be going on for some time still, and I think this is a good thing, with Andrew Gower saying 6 months, maybe. On to our negatives. Some features are missing in early access, which I think would have overall improved the gameplay for a lot of people, notably trading and weapon special attacks. There are too many clicks for basic interactions. Left click is move camera and interact with objects for some reason. I'm not sure why middle mouse can't be move camera instead. The tiles in the game really kind of make it feel like a game than a world at times. An opacity slider would be good for this or something. Rooms are limited to 20 players and there's no central hub or capital, which I definitely feel as though I'm missing so far. Profession gathering feels like it gets old due to the attention that the game demands and lack of variety in ways for you to train them. It feels like UI elements were designed for phone or tablet and then to make sense for PC afterwards. And to be honest, this game would fit on those platforms extremely well, it just needs to do better for PC first. Different professions and gear in different episodes is somewhat antithetical to typically progression-driven MMORPGs. Even if once you get to see the bigger picture and why they're doing this and it makes more sense, people see they get to the new area, they're level 1 again and they get mad. Maybe the game could do a bit better of explaining this and what the expectation will be moving forwards. It feels a bit clunky in general between the UI, the player movement, the spam clicking for everything, and it feels as though at times the game does things specifically just so it's not going to be compared to Runescape, such as no central bank, no static gathering nodes, choosing your weapon each time before combat. RuneScape had simple answers for simple problems and it worked. You don't need to redesign the wheel. Overall, Brighter Shores has the potential to be a good, primarily solo player focused grind game where you can casually log in and watch the XP bar go up a little bit. Despite being in the MMO genre, I think the audience for this type of gameplay is actually pretty big. Myself, I had a fairly good time in Brighter Shores, but there's definitely room for improvement as a whole here. It's one where I'll be looking for some quality of life updates and checking back in later on, or even more towards its full release to see what's changed and how it will be then. I may even do a full review at that stage if it catches my interest. Let me know if you've given Brighter Shores a go at all, what did you think, and do you reckon this has the potential to be something brand new, or can it just not escape the shadow of RuneScape looming over it? Let me know in the comments down below. And as always, thank you all so much for watching and listening in, and I shall see you on the next one very soon.